there's some sort of basis of a historical character that this comes from?
Well, yes. I don't know where quite to start on this, but you know, I'm an Australian, but I also have a US passport. I've lived in New York for 20 years. I never imagined that I could really engage with the notion of America because I'm not sort of really born there. But then I read this book, Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville, which is a book I know is so famous. I gave all my friends in New York, you know about it. People to the left and the right quote it. It's, you know, the funny thing about it I discovered is that actually, you know, and my understanding was this French aristocrat came in the 1830s, really got American democracy. That's how I get it. And then I discover, really, as I read the book and I start to talk to my friends, I realise they haven't really, even though they're very smart and have PhDs or whatever, most of them haven't read all the book at all.
So this is one of those books that's more quoted than read.
Quoted incredibly. I mean, try Googling Tocqueville. God. But the thing is, of course, he was very smart, very intelligent, had all sorts of reasons to be interested in the success of democracy, but was of his class and of his time. And so was firstly snobbish in a way that people won't allow that Tocqueville was snobbish. They always think I've made that. It's up in the book. Any snobbish thing in the book about America basically is lifted from Tocqueville. The other thing is that he had all sorts of questions. The things that he was worried about American democracy were the very same things. I mean, at the time I'm reading this book, I am worried, as many of us are, not enough, about the great sea of cultural crap we are swimming in. You read Tocqueville, he is worried that this is going to happen. Then you're sitting there looking at this, you know, over the years I was writing it. Bush was president, Cheney was vice president, Rumsfeld was there. There was a sort of a terrible air of sort of criminality and illegality about that administration. And you look into Tocqueville. Tocqueville's worried that this sort of stuff is happening. And I mean, and Tocqueville's sort of worried that not that anyone can be president, but that anyone can be president. And then Sarah Palin comes along. And this is sort of Tocqueville's nightmare. So I suddenly thought, this is an interesting way to engage with this country. And I love New York City. The United States generally scares and bewilders me and whatever. They really are two different places. I mean, two different. Well, yeah, two different worlds.
Yeah, there's New York City, and then there's America, and you know, they really don't have a lot to do with each other in a lot of ways.
No, of course, all of the United States is filled with people. You know, not filled with, but you know, there are substantial liberal or democratic majorities and minorities in all sorts of places. You get to Austin, Texas, and they're very pleased to talk to you.
I met her. She's now living. She married one of my friends. She lives up here now, so she's gone.
Yeah.
He came from Austin, so
yeah, Austin's full of them. So I thought, you know, that where Tocqueville, and his book is sort of really wonderful, and it's really well written and interesting. And sorry, I was going to say he worries about the rule of the majority. Look at Arizona. I mean, Arizona now is a Tocqueville nightmare. That's the sort of thing that he's worried about. Anyway, Tocqueville himself came with his friend, a young aristocrat called Beaumont, and the pair of them travelled across the country, arguing and talking continually and making notes about this thing of democracy. I thought I would much rather have this unlikely pair of the aristocrat and somebody, you know, Parrot, in fact, the son of an itinerant printer, older, someone who wanted to be an artist, has ended up being a servant, sort of looks at his employer, who he's meant to be spying on as well, calls him Lord Migraine, Lord Pintledy Pantledy, you know, so he's sort of hostile, very hostile to the aristocrat, and the aristocrat sort of really finds Parrot sort of disgusting in almost every way, and they end up sort of being stuck together and finally to actually form what Parrot describes as the first friendship of its type that ever existed anywhere in the world. And but what I was trying to do was sort of have an argument about democracy, you know, because even no matter what Tocqueville's fears were, and the well-founded fears about culture in what we could call a capitalist democracy, and what are the problems with the rule of the majority. Nobody wants to go back to kings and queens and having, molten lead poured into your intestines because you parked too long on a parking meter or something. And so there's an argument that exists, two different views about democracy, and it doesn't sort of quite resolve in the way we might think it does. But it doesn't. The arguments don't resolve at all, really. They sort of sit there, sort of humming in sort of parallel lines, speaking to each other and attracting and repulsing each other. And the arguments sort of drive the book in a way. And I think it's to the degree that the arguments are not resolved, I think it's an honest book, and if one can be utilitarian, so it's even a useful book. But that sort of really is the engine that powers what is a sort of a comic adventure in many respects. Sometimes quite sad and wrenching, but I hope it has. I hope it makes people laugh sometimes too.
The book is Parrot and Olivier in America. I've been speaking with two-time Booker Prize winner Peter Carey, and Parrot and Olivier in America is published by Random House of Canada.